All right. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and get started, guys. It's top of the hour, and we appreciate you spending your time to have some lunch and chat with us for a bit. So I am Joey Graham, and I'm here with Bruce Gehring. We are with Prochant and Allegiance Group, and we are going to have an interesting conversation here today, guys. I'm pretty excited about it. So Bruce and I talk a lot. You've probably seen us, hopefully, and if not, then thank you for joining for the first time. If not, I bet a lot of you on the call have heard us before. And Bruce, we talk a lot of theory. We go out there and we give a lot of best practices. We talk a lot of theory, and that's because we've got thriving businesses that have been doing this for a while and are managing a lot of revenue for providers. And so I decided, and we kind of decided this time, let's just talk about what we're doing. Since we've got a tremendous amount of experience in these spaces, we can all learn from each other, right? And I know both of our companies are managing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue for HME providers. And so let's just kind of share like some of the best practices that we're doing internally and how we're managing our own business and how we're creating value for providers. Of course, selfishly, it's to talk about our businesses. That's what we want to do. And I wouldn't want to lie to anyone on the call thinking that's not one of our goals. But if you're doing this in-house, if you're working with other companies, I mean, there's a kind of a right way to do things. And it's always nice to see how other businesses do it. I also want to call out real quick that this is a 30-minute session. We want to kind of be very respectful of your time. If you have any questions as we go through, and I hope that you will, please put that in the Q&A box or the chat. We'll try to get to it, and if not, then we'll get you a response right afterwards. But so what we're going to do is kind of a two-part series, and this is part one. And again, we're going to be kind of interviewing each other. So this session, I'm going to be interviewing Bruce, and then our next session, Bruce is going to be interviewing me. And what we're going to be talking about today is patient pay, and what we're going to be talking about next month is insurance pay. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And I'll introduce myself really quick, and then Bruce, I'll get you to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with the Q&A. So thanks again for joining. I'm Joey Graham. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Manager at Prochant. We are one of the largest HME billing companies, and I have been in our industry for over 20 years now. I actually started as a service technician right out of high school. Worked my way up the chain of command in an HME provider while I got my MBA, and ended up being a director of operations and general manager for an HME before I moved over to being a software consultant for Brightree. And that was a really amazing experience to travel the country and work with providers on site, helping them with the software, helping them with business challenges. And that led me to my next opportunity, which is as VP of Revenue Cycle for a large provider. And that turned into this opportunity to work with Prochant. I've been here for about 6 years now. So tremendous amount of experience in our industry. And I've been a provider as well as a vendor. So a lot of knowledge. And Bruce, why don't you tell a little bit about your story?
Sure. Thanks, Joey. I am the Senior Vice President of Business Development here at Allegiance Group. And my background was in finance and business administration, actually in a different industry, but then came to this opportunity through the finance side and started with the Allegiance Group about 13 years ago, right when competitive bidding and all that stuff really started to, change the landscape for providers in this industry, and really have kind of grown with the industry just because of what the evolution has been, what we've all experienced in this last 10, 15 year period. And the Allegiance Group really was founded on really the whole notion of trying to help providers get their patient pay. And through that journey, it's been exciting because we've been able to go ahead and develop a lot of different solutions that providers like yourselves are looking for, that they need now, that they were not able to have as part of the billing software platform or systems that they had in place in their operations. So we've been able to kind of navigate this environment and be able to provide those solutions that people are looking for to help them with their patient pay. And that's where I come in, because I am the person that goes out and works with Joey's company to help, strategize to figure out what can we do to help you guys get more of your, your revenue in the door. And that's from a billing standpoint and from a collection standpoint. So we work together on a lot of projects and are asked to go in and take a look at, what the problems are that we can solve for and create the solution. So I love that. It makes me want to get up every day and go to work, because it's a great way to feel like you've accomplished something when you can help somebody solve a business problem. And that's a little bit about me.
That's great. And that's also a great lead into my first question, Bruce, is, can you give us a background, or can you tell us the story of Allegiance Group and sort of
Sure.
where it came from? How old is it?
Yeah.
A little bit like that.
That's great. Allegiance Group's actually been around for 23 years. And it started solely on the collection side of the business. The previous owner of our company really started with a collection agency and was really out there. And gosh, I don't want to date myself, but I might date some of the people on the call. If you recall, you could go ahead and go to a TransUnion or a number of different collection agencies, and they would sell you a book of credits for collection accounts. Joe, you probably saw this in your life. And so you would go ahead and that credit would allow you to take an account and move it through their collection process. And what was interesting is the owner had the foresight when he was working with a particular customer, American Home patient, in eons ago, and they needed a better solution for their patient pay. So they worked together to create a workflow that really started the patient pay process, that revenue cycle from day one. And the reason that was becoming a problem was because of competitive bidding. And what we were all used to 15, 20 years ago was that the patient pay was a throwaway, right? It was, who cared? You're getting reimbursed by the payer. You made your money. And patient pay was minuscule. Well, with the reimbursement, changes with competitive bidding, that really flipped the model, because now you had less reimbursement on the payer side and it was being shifted to the patient. And we did not have any good way to get that money from the patient. So that's where we came in. So starting with that process, and then fast forward today, as we've seen in the last 5 years, that huge upsurge in patient pay because of deductibles. High deductible plans are the way of the world now. And so now the burden of, payers like yourself getting your money now has been shifted, not just from the patient or from the payer, but now it's being shifted to the patient too. And if you don't get the patient pay portion, that's probably your profit. So it becomes a real concern for the providers on this call that you have to mind that patient pay portion, or you're not just leaving money on the table, you're probably not going to be as profitable as you need to be, and that could threaten your business.
Absolutely. And speaking of the shift of cost to patient, 23 years ago, like you said, it was nice to collect from the patient. It was good. It was kind of the cherry on top, but it wasn't necessary, and it was never that important. And that was the days of the dump and chase model, which is we're going to dump once a month, we're going to dump statements out there into the market, and then we're going to cross our fingers and we're going to hope that some of them pay. The payment rate in that model, Bruce, like the payment rate, what do you guys see, like that traditional just dump and chase model?
Well, what is scary is that even today, the patient pay in our industry for just that model that you're talking about is less than 50%.
Right. If you're doing a good job.
If you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And you know, that is just, my gosh, half your money just saying goodbye once you print the statement and let it go. And that's, we just say, you got to take control of this. You know, you got to manage this process better. And that's really where I think, you know, the patient pay model, and I have a slide, Joey, that really kind of shows this, which
let's see that. Yeah.
Which really kind of gives you that sense of what's happened. Because I know it might be small on your screen, so I'll kind of walk through this. But if you look at what's happened to the deductible over the course of the last 10 years, like in 2009, the deductible, the vast majority of customers, it was less than $1,000. It was actually less than $500. And you can see that right here. And now that's completely flipped. So if you take a look at 2019, you're talking about 60% of that is now in a category over $1,000. And it's just, and you know, you think about yourself. I mean, you know, family deductible on my plan is $5,000. So the patient's coming out of pocket $5,000 before the single coverage dollar is going to be paid by a payer. So, you know, that's a huge game changer. And then I'll just flip one more slide here, Joey, just, you know, just kind of stay on this. When you take a look at medical debt as a whole, it becomes even more apparent, because there is a statistic out there right now that to cover a $400 medical bill, only about 41% of the people can't cover that medical bill of $400 in one billing cycle. So that tells you there's an opportunity to work with the patient pay model to try to get people to pay their bills and set up some sort of term in advance and not just chase the dollars after the fact. And then when you look at the total medical debt in our industry, you're looking at the vast majority, 60% of us, owe over $1,000. And certainly when you take a look at the high medical debt of, you know, $5,000 or above, oh my gosh, 40%. I mean, again, it's just, it's crazy. So, I mean, yeah. It's an absolute necessity that we, you know, not only pay attention to this, but you've got to get your arms around it and focus on it. And with that focus, you can start affecting the change that you need in your organization to start recovering those dollars that have just been slipping away.
Exactly. And so that's where it comes into the platform, the COLLECTPlus platform, the COLLECTPlus method and process. And that's, I love it. And I can't wait to talk about it in more detail in this call. But first, can you just give us kind of an overview, like what are some of the advantages of having a platform like COLLECTPlus in place, as opposed to that traditional model we talked about?
Yep. And, you know, Joey, I think there comes, and it really applies to your business as well. You know, it is creating a discipline, you know, and those communication, those best practices that can be not only executed consistently, but you have process and automation in place to drive those things efficiently, so you can actually count on things happening and anticipate what needs to be done and focus on those things that are, quote, exceptions. So let's face it, resources are stretched thin. So, you know, having a product like this in place really allows you to run not only more efficiently, but a heck of a lot more effectively. So you can spend those resource dollars, and that's typically people, right? You know, so you get those people in the right places where they can impact your business more directly. But the fact that you have a system that has a comprehensive solution that not only is dealing with just kicking out a statement and putting it in the mail, but now you have the ability to have a payment portal. You can actually tap into additional resources using our call center services, so we can actually support or augment the actual resources that you have to handle or triage those patient calls that come in, so that you can effectively deal with that in your business operation. And then, okay, that's great. You have all these tools out there, but you've got to have a way to manage all that. So having a dashboard that allows you to see all of this in one place, so you can immediately act on those initiatives or those key issues, the alerts, the exceptions. So you're managing by exception versus having to think about all of the pieces of the puzzle and manage those individually. That's really the critical part of that. And then tie that in with a customer success strategy, where in our case, we have an individual that is dedicated to the actual account to deal with the problems that you have on the ground. So this becomes your solution. So knowing your circumstances, having that person work with you to customize the process as needed so that you get the best results. And I know that's a long explanation, but that kind of gives you the flavor of, why somebody would want to look at, an outsourced service like ours, and the advantages that those can drive for the business.
Absolutely. I think it's hard to even grasp because it's so complex. The number of touches and the number of handoffs that are really needed for an effective process there. You have to make sure that AR doesn't sit and doesn't stagnate, and that it keeps moving through the process. And you made a good word there. Automated. It moves by itself through the process. Nobody's having to push it through this process. And one thing you mentioned there that I think is really neat is it's not just the technology platform and the mailing of the statements, but you guys actually you'll not only make outbound collection calls, but you'll take the phone calls in, right?
Yes.
Like you'll answer the statement calls. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
And that is huge, because that's also then the scope of work around that, having people dedicated for the provider's situation. They know your policies, procedures, et cetera, so they can be an extension of your staff when they're dealing with that patient. And they're going to be able to answer those billing questions and things like that come up, because let's just think about the calls that come in. What are the questions that are asked besides, I don't understand my bill?
Right.
They want to know, what was covered. Well, you can actually go in and look at the insurance claim and do those types of things, so they can help navigate with the patient, triage the call. They're not going to solve for somebody having an issue with a piece of equipment or something like that, but they'll have the protocol in place to be able to take that person and get them to the right place so their problem can be solved. So it really needs to be looked at beyond just, what we can do over the phone to take a payment. It's really helping the customer service aspect of the business.
Sure. And let's drill down a little bit. Let's talk about the process.
Sure.
Can you kind of walk me through the workflow and the COLLECTPlus process?
Yep. Let's start with this. And I know this is really busy, but this gives you a good example how our two organizations combine to create this solution for a provider. And the light blue on the workflow chart here is where COLLECTPlus comes in. And the dark blue is where you're really looking at the insurance billing process that Joey provides. So the two of us intermingle. The processes intermingle. And you got to look at it that way. You can't just, put it in a silo. it is looking at this flow and where is the opportunity to touch that patient and what information do we need to move that relationship forward and in a way that's going to benefit our organizations as a healthcare provider. And that really, starts at intake, getting the information up front and establishing, once you've looked at eligibility and those types of things, estimating what the patient pay is going to be and managing that, proactively is then where you plug into the tool to help you facilitate that automation, to facilitate the efficiency, to facilitate the effectiveness of the process. So it by all means is not hands off. It still takes people to manage systems and processes and stuff like that. But used properly, you're going to have the most efficient, most effective process in place for your business. And that's what this kind of depicts what the different decisions that have to be made along the way, where you have the various touch points and what should that patient experience be throughout this journey so that they're being made a loyal customer of yours, and the experience is a pleasant one all the way through.
Absolutely. And you've got another one too, I think, that kind of talks through the COLLECTPlus workflow, right?
Yes.
And how it works,
Yes.
It moves through phases. That's what I love. I mean, the phases are the secret sauce.
It really is. It really is, Joey. And this is where, I hate, some of these words are when you say customizable, when you say flexible, when you say, what does that mean? Well, I mean, ultimately, it's sitting down with the HME provider and saying, what are we wanting to solve for? And let's look at those issues that are facing your business based on patient demographic, based on product and service mix. All of those things have to be, brought into play, and payer mix, quite frankly. I mean, those things also impact this. So understanding what the business is and what the challenges are, then we can start talking about this best communication practice. So the idea is, looking at the automation, so it's doing most of the work for you. So you can make decisions on the reporting that's available to you and use the best practices to really get the best results and get the patient response that you need, and in a very as quickly as possible. So when you take a look at the phases, and we break everything down in phases because we take a look at the account when the account's new and it's current in that first phase, and then what happens when it becomes past due, and that's that second phase. And then you have a pre-collection phase, which is the third phase, and then final collections, which is the traditional, what do you do with an account that just is stubborn and won't pay? And even there, it's unique. And you can see there's a lot of different things that can happen in each of those phases. So when you look at communication to the patient, let's look at that patient journey. How are we going to communicate with the patient? My goal is that ultimately you want the right message at the right time in the right way. And so you use, the right, what channel does that patient want to receive that message? Well, it's not just paper, so being able to go ahead and connect with the patient in a way they prefer is going to get you better results. And I'll tell you right now, and we see it, and I know you see it too, Joey, is that if you get your patients connected to electronically, digitally, they're going to be more receptive to not only your messaging, but also they're going to be better payers. And the fact is that if you can do that, now you're getting your money so much faster because you're not waiting for the mail, you're not chasing the bill, etc. You can immediately get a text notification, an e-notification of a new bill going out the day that it's generated. You know, so yes, we can still send that statement, but guess what? They'll probably respond to the e-statement or the text sooner than they have even received the mail, right? So you just got your money if they go to the patient portal to pay, much faster than waiting for them to process that mail and send in the check. And that to me is huge, but it doesn't end there. So even in that first 30-day journey, you have multiple ways of getting the new charge out to the patient and communicate to them with that. But then if they're not responding right away, you don't want to wait another 30 days to send another statement. So we do a reminder call. And that reminder call, it's not an IVR, it's a reminder call with a link. So there's a prompt that they will, if they want to speak to somebody about their bill or make a payment over the phone, they press 1, redirects that call back to the billing team that's going to take that payment, or it could be our call center to take that triage call. So there's a way to be able to manage the patient volume that you're looking at much more efficiently and effectively. And that's just in the first 30 days. And that's when you can go ahead, and the cadence of that is also flexible, because we work with customers all over the country. And, if you're in a high density urban area where you've got good mail systems, you're getting the statement in a couple of days. But if you're in a rural setting where you're dealing with PO boxes and stuff like that, it may be a week before somebody gets their mail. So, what's the best way to do this? And what is the timing that we need for that communication? Because again, going back to that patient journey, you don't want to irritate somebody because they haven't had time to even get their mail, and you're calling them up saying, hey, you owe me money. So you want to make sure that your cadence of that messaging is set up properly. And by the way, we can set up a best practice and change it like that overnight if we see we're tracking this information and we need to adjust something to accommodate that type of workflow. But then, that moves right into the second phase. The communication has to change. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. What is that? The definition of insanity?
Right.
You want to go ahead and create some urgency in the messaging, which you can do with the statement, with the phone calls, etc. All of that can be customized to your needs. And then, that moves into that third phase, which is pre-collections. And that's kind of unique, Joey, because this is where you're really trying to get that low-hanging fruit. The people that are going to pay, but for some reason, they've just, delayed or procrastinated, whatever. So when we take a look at that, yes, we do a automated call campaign initially, but it's for a very short period of time. But they're getting phone calls to respond, to contact the payer or the provider to get them to establish a payment plan or make a payment or ask a question. But then it flips to an outbound effort where we're actually making those outbound calls to the patient so we can get them on the phone and find out what's really going on. And you're doing this so it's corrective action, right? So you're trying to get them to go ahead and tell their story, and this is where we have the protocols in place to say, okay, is there a settlement authority? Is there a payment term that you're going to agree to, et cetera? And we can facilitate that for you. And that's all done in the first party. So it's not threatening. You're not talking to a collection agency. You haven't been reported to the credit bureau. It's all that stuff that you can do to get those people to gently change their habits or their process or their, just change their ways before the account goes into that hardcore collections. And that's when you go into the final collections. And even there, that's unique because you're dealing with two components there. One is that we do believe at that point where accounts are getting to be a year old, really you're going to have to shake something up, and usually, and there's a reason why somebody hasn't responded. That's when you can go ahead and use the attorney, because then you've got those people that respond because it's becoming serious in their mind. They're getting a letter from an attorney or a phone call from an attorney. And if that doesn't work, then really, or if they've said, hey, stop calling, your only recourse is then you have to make a choice if you're going to take legal action or not to recontact the patient. And then really, if they just tell you to stop calling, really and you're not going to sue, really your only recourse is to go ahead and it's got to go to a different agency so they can recontact that patient. And that allows that persistence and that consistent collection effort to occur. And that's where you can report them to the credit bureau if you choose to, kind of as that last lever to try to get somebody to pay. And it's really the combination of all of these things that's automated in this process and developed specifically for the provider based on their needs that really gets the results. And then you monitor it. You look at the performance results over time and build on that and make adjustments according to what you think will get you better results. And that's really our mantra. That's how we approach an account. So we partner with somebody to really try to drive those results. And that's really the best analogy I think I can have around the best practices here.
Yeah, and that was awesome, Bruce. I mean, I wish we had more time. I know we could go even deeper into that. I have a lot of clarifications and questions even I would ask, but yeah. I think that what's incredible about this is you've got the platform in place. The whole thing is automated. Allegiance Group facilitates the whole thing, even that movement to phase 4 and that move into final collections, and you guys will move the accounts over for them. You'll move them from the one agency to the next agency if the first one doesn't collect. So you keep those balances moving. You work with that, all reportable to the provider. The provider can have collections rates at each phase of the process. And of course, the collections goes down a little bit as you go farther and farther down the funnel, and those balances get older and older. But all of that's there, and it's all right up front. So I know we've got to end the call here, but there's a lot more that we could talk about with Allegiance Group. They've got an ROI calculator that they can kind of go over with you based on how many statements you have. Kind of demo their system for you, and all the different ways that they could maybe interact with your company and get those feeds out of your database, and that's what we've got. So I know we're here at the end of our 30 minutes, and I appreciate all of you joining us today. I hope that this sparks some interest for you, and if you do have any interest, please give Bruce a call or shoot him an email. I know he'd love to jump on the call with you and talk over it. And in about a month, we're going to have one more webinar on March 24th, and we're going to go the other direction. Bruce is going to interview me, and we're going to be talking about insurance billing as opposed to patient billing. Any final thoughts, Bruce?
I just know we ran out of time, and I apologize for that. And so I'll promise you, Joe's much more succinct with his answers. So we'll probably get through a lot more information with Joey. But I appreciate your time. And again, please contact me if you have any questions. Love to talk you through our system, our process, and see if we can help you. And then I look forward to next month because Joey, we've sat in on so many different sessions and webinars and presentations together. And this is the way to go after your payer billing. They've got a great process. So if you're not using Joey already, you've got to consider this because it's a great way to get your claims paid quickly and have a process that's going to monitor it and follow it up and get the payers to pay.
Absolutely. I just saw a question about the slides. We'll definitely get the slides out to all the attendees.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you next month.
Thank you.